Very good morning to everyone. My name is Declan McGarrigle and I work for the Special EU Programmes Body who are responsible for the management and implementation of the PEACEPLUS Programme. You're all very welcome here today to this really critically important investment area for us. It's such a live issue at the minute, as we all know. I don't need to tell people in this room of some of the challenges that everyone's trying to respond to around the environment and around some of the issues that are arising over recent months and recent years. So welcome, and hopefully today you'll get a good sense of how the PEACEPLUS programme is proposing to respond to some of that. And we're going to take you through that today and also introduce you to the pre-application support process for investment area 5.2. So today is really looking at the context for how we've arrived at this point in terms of being able to talk to you today in relation to this investment area ahead of the pre-application support and also ahead then of the call formally opening at a later stage. So this is really your opportunity today to engage with us, to ask questions, to listen to what we've got to say in terms of the focus of this investment area. And then also it's an opportunity as well for you to network, and I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and there was a lot of discussion over coffee there beforehand, and there's time for that later on today as well. So really, we really want to see good networks, good partnerships begin to be built from this point. So please do use that opportunity today if us all being here to do that. So what I want to do is to introduce some of my colleagues that are here today as well. And from the PEACEPLUS programme itself over the last number of years has been built very much in partnership with a range of key stakeholders and also with people out there that are focused on a range of different sectoral areas as well. But we've also worked very closely with our colleagues in what we call our accountable departments. And they're here today. They're the two accountable departments from DAERA and DHLGH in Northern Ireland. And Ireland will be providing some of the match funding to any projects that are funded under this investment area in the future. So we have Colin Armstrong here today from DAERA, Anika Clements from DAERA, and we also have Tim O'Higgins as well from DHLGH. Bit of a mouthful that, but got there. And also today, just to introduce you as well, some of you may be familiar with Emer before, but Emer Bush will be carrying out the pre-application support for this particular investment area. And Emer has worked across a range of different investment areas now across the PEACEPLUS programme over the last probably 18 months, Emer, and longer. So very well experienced, and Emer will take you through the support that she's going to provide over the course of the next number of weeks. Just some housekeeping. There's no planned fire alarms today. So if the fire alarm does go off, if you just follow myself and some of my colleagues, and we're just going out that door over there. So hopefully that won't arise, but if it does, that's where we'll go. So what I want to do is just briefly just take you through the agenda for today. So I'll give you a very short number of slides on the context for how we've got here in terms of PEACEPLUS, so where it's all come from. And we're now, I suppose, at this stage in the process, well underway with the programme. Really since June, there's been 10 calls for applications that have opened so far. A large number of those, or the majority of those, have now closed, and we're going into an assessment phase at the minute. But there's much more to come as well, including this particular investment area. So I'll take you through that very, very briefly. Then my colleagues, Anika and Tim, will then give an overview of some of the policy interests, the strategies and policies and context from the government departments, things that you need to be aware of in the context of developing a PEACEPLUS application around this particular investment area. And then, as I said, Emer Bush will take us through then pre-application support, the concept note process. So some of you will have been through this process with some of the other investment areas and the pre-application support, but some of you will be very new to this as well. And this is something that's new for this programme period, something that we're very much encouraging people to engage in. So Emer will be there to provide that support, and she'll take us through that later on. Emer will also take us through the investment area in much more detail as well, so supplementing what our colleagues from the two departments will say. But Emer will give some focus to some of the key actions that you will be expected to address as part of the project that you'll be submitting to PEACEPLUS. There will be time at the end for some questions and answers and some discussion. So I would ask you if you can listen to the context, the programme overview, the investment area overview, the pre-application and concept support information, and then at the end we'll open it up for questions. And there'll also be time later on as well over coffee again before you leave to speak to us after the event as well. So how did we get here? We have had a very long process of programme development that really started back in 2018. So looking at the socio-economic status of the programme area, engaging with key stakeholders, including the two governments and the executive departments and the Irish government departments, the UK government, and of course the European Commission. The programme itself, you'll not be surprised really, I'm sure you've all looked at it. It's building on what's come before. So a lot of this are familiar areas that have been a focus of the PEACE programmes before, or indeed the Interreg programmes, particularly in the context of this particular investment area. There is a renewed focus on peace and reconciliation, and we have to be mindful that this is a peace programme, and it's really important for projects under Theme 5, which are dealing with a lot of these environmental challenges and indeed some of the opportunities to address those in the coming years. But it's important to be mindful that you are applying under a peace programme. So the context has to be about, how a more stable society and a better environment, more sustainable region, how that ultimately will contribute to peace and prosperity. So it's always important to be thinking in those terms as well. And it's also about, projects, obviously contributing to cross-border and economic and territorial development. So for this particular investment area of the programme, it's an absolute prerequisite that you have collaborative engagement and partnerships between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And it can be beyond that as well, in terms of involving organisations outside the programme area where they can add value to the programme. So as I said, the programme's overall objective is about peace and prosperity. So you can't have one without the other. So again, just to reiterate that point, it's important that you're thinking on those terms. And this is the base information really in terms of the programme itself. So the key focus is the programme area of Northern Ireland in its entirety and the 6 border counties of Ireland. But as I say, that can go beyond that, so you can involve partners from Scotland, for example, from further south on the island of Ireland. But it's about making that argument that it's going to have added value, it's going to be beneficial, or in some cases, it's absolutely fundamental to what you're trying to achieve. Shared waters, for example, shared ecosystems, whatever that might be, that you have to build that rationale in. The programme value is in excess of €1 billion. So a huge financial commitment has been made by the European Commission, the Irish government, and also the UK government as well. So, and the Northern Ireland executive departments. So that programme total in terms of over €1 billion is more than double the size of our current 2 programmes that SEUPB manage, PEACE 4 programme and the Interreg 5A. So it gives some sense of the importance of this programme for the region, and also the opportunities that it gives in terms of that financial support to address some of these issues and challenges that we have in a very meaningful and impactful way. So there's 6 thematic areas. The programme structure, it's been divided into 6 themes and 22 investment areas. There's also room within the programme for what we would call smaller grants, significant in their own right, and I think it's important to be aware of them, but these would be grants that are up to €100,000. So very much aimed and geared towards the community and voluntary sector. But it's important that, to be aware that those opportunities are coming further down the line and can include environmental projects as well. Dealing with some of these challenges that we're dealing with at a much larger level in under investment area 5.2. There is a focus on areas and communities that are obviously most affected by some of our troubled history and some of the legacy impacts of all of that, and some of what we still continue to have as challenges. So, in urban areas, obviously, but a renewed focus as well on rural communities, on border areas, and also around things like the social economy, how the community and voluntary sector and can respond to some of these issues as well. And also looking at some new emerging technology, that's something that we're very much trying to drive right throughout every investment area under the programme, and present to organisations and individuals that are developing projects, to think about, how some of that new technology, how we can be more innovative, in terms of how we manage projects, but also then in terms of some of the core activities that you'd be carrying out. And I know a lot of you will be in that space already in terms of innovation and everything else. So this is just the schematic really in terms of the structure of the programme in a bit more detail. I'm not going to go through all of this. There's a lot of information on our website that you can go and have a look at, and I would encourage you to do so. There's a programme overview document. So if there's any of these areas that aren't the focus of today's workshop, do go and have a look at the more detailed information that exists on our website. And there's also, I think this is, I probably should have done a count before I came here, but I think this is probably our 15th or 16th pre-application workshop. So there's a lot of, all of those workshops that we've held to date over the course of the last 18 months. They're all on our website, so you can go and have a look at those. There's still a lot of calls that are still to open. You don't have to have engaged in the pre-application support process or a concept note to be able to apply in the future for any of these. So, if there are any areas that you're interested in, please go and have a look at that information. But theme 5, which is highlighted, is where this investment area 5.2 falls, the marine and coastal management investment area. And it's just important to note that, in the context of the programme. So theme 5 was all about supporting a sustainable future. So at this point, I'm going to pass over to Anika from DAERA, and Anika is going to take us through the policy context and some of the strategies that you need to be aware of from DAERA's perspective, and then I'll invite Tim up after that. So Anika, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome again. And as you've mentioned, I am representing DAERA today and looking at our policy sort of drivers for this programme. Now, I'm going to do a bit of an overview starting at a kind of global and regional level, down to a UK level, and then to a Northern Ireland level. And I know many in this room are quite well versed on the policy side, but there's many that may not be, and there's been a lot of policy development in the last couple of years that are particularly relevant to this call. But I want to sort of start off by, I guess, emphasising that this call is very much around the climate change work as well as biodiversity. So it's linking those two together. So just starting with the global and regional frameworks, I'm not going to go through every word on the slides, and this is being recorded and the slides will be disseminated afterwards. But it's really to highlight that, as I've mentioned, climate change is crucial to the call. This is working very much within the work towards the Paris Agreement, which has now come through into our Climate Change Act, but also more recently, the 2022 Global Biodiversity Framework that was agreed last December, which very much had a couple of targets of particular relevance to this call. One of which is about restoring marine and coastal ecosystems and identifying degraded areas and then restoring those. And there's targets there that are highly ambitious by 2030 to have at least 30% of those degraded ecosystems under effective restoration. The other target that was notable in the Global Biodiversity Framework is around the marine protected areas and ensuring that those or the other effective area-based conservation measures are actually effectively conserved and managed. So that's very much looking at the management of those areas as well as designation of them. So moving to a UK level, we have the UK Marine Strategy, which is the sort of outworkings of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive with the goal of achieving good environmental status. And I'm not going to go into detail because there's a lot of detail behind that. There's lots of different descriptors and indicators to look at how we are moving towards good environmental status. But it is a key framework that a lot of our policy works within. We also, in the coastal area, have the water framework regulations. And in Northern Ireland's coastal waters, we've achieved good ecological status for most of these, but we have not achieved good status. So in terms of chemical and other constituents, there's issues there. We have the new Environment Act, which the Northern Ireland Commencement Order started last year, which requires us to develop an environmental improvement plan. And that is still in process, but that's also of relevance and linking, again, some of these global frameworks that have come in the last couple of years to the local action. And crucially, we now also have the UK Fisheries Act and its joint fisheries statement. And that really pulls together some of that other work that's done under the UK Marine Strategy. So it very much emphasises that fisheries management needs to take an ecosystem-based approach. And it identifies that that has to be aligned with achieving good environmental status under the Marine Strategy framework. It also very crucially says that it must not compromise the capacity of marine ecosystems to respond to human-induced changes. So resilience to climate change is absolutely key and has been written into a number of important pieces of legislation lately. So just doing a very quick recap, and I'm going to whiz through this. So UK Marine Strategy's last assessment was done in 2018, and there's going to be a new assessment produced for next year, 2024. But we only achieved 4 out of 15 at good environmental status of the descriptors. And I've highlighted a few of these here. So in terms of where we are, we have a mixed picture for marine mammals, fish populations, food webs, and benthic and pelagic habitats. The mixed picture means that they're not achieving good environmental status, but often that's partly because we're data deficient. And that means that we don't have the evidence base to be able to know how close are we to good environmental status for those descriptors. And that's a really important thing for this call, is very much improving the evidence base towards those. We know that seabird populations remain at risk and continue to decline, and we also haven't achieved good environmental status for non-Indigenous species or marine litter. So there's quite a lot there that we need to make significant improvements to, both in terms of our management of the issues, but also our understanding of the issues. So there's this coupling between the need for the evidence base and the need for understanding effective management. So I'm just delving very briefly into a couple of these assessments. On your left there is the UK Marine Strategy assessment for the relative breeding success of different seabirds, breeding abundance. And we can see for the Celtic seas, there's a large number that are have significant issues, of which many of the terns are included in that. To your right is the very recently published quality status report for benthic habitats. This was the OSPAR quality status report, which was published just literally a couple of weeks ago in September. And I would encourage you to look at the OSPAR website, which has the detail of the quality status report. You can hover over it and zoom into things like the Celtic Seas area. But this figure shows that there is continued issues in terms of impact to threatened or declining habitats due to disturbance of the seabed. The next one again is from the OSPAR Quality Status Report, just zooming in there on the state of pelagic habitats. This picture is also sort of reflected in the food webs indicators. And what we see here is that we are not achieving good environmental status for our pelagic habitats in the Celtic Seas. Similarly, marine birds, as previously assessed in 2018 for the UK Marine Strategy, the Celtic Seas results were also not good for marine birds, and that's across a number of different indicators. And I do encourage you to delve into those assessments, because they also identify where there are data deficiencies and where the assessments couldn't be completed for certain areas. So moving into a Northern Ireland context, we have had a flurry of policy development over the last few years. I've put in green executive level strategies, of which there's the green growth one and the environment strategy. The environment strategy will form our environmental improvement plan under the Environment Act. These are executive level strategies, so they are pending sign off by the executive. So at the moment they are still draft, but you can access those drafts on the internet. Below that, there are a number of strategies that are currently in development. The nature recovery strategy is the new Northern Ireland biodiversity strategy. There's the marine plan, which is due to be published hopefully later this year or early next year. Then we have a couple of marine specific bits of work going on, the Blue Carbon Action Plan and the Marine Protected Area Strategy Review, which have both been co-developed with stakeholders. Then we have more species specific work, which I haven't actually put in the slide, but a lot of you will be aware of. We have a seabird conservation strategy in development and an elasmobranch strategy in development. And again, those are being co-developed. And although these are not yet out for consultation, we are hoping to share the draft action tables from all of those with applicants. EMA will help to disseminate those in due course. But the really big one on this slide is actually the Climate Change Act from last year. And this was our first Climate Change Act in Northern Ireland, and it's a key piece of legislation regarding both mitigation and adaptation to climate change. So it encapsulates the same overarching goal as the UK Climate Change Act, so net zero by 2050, but it also requires public body reporting on progress towards the climate action plan. So that's setting carbon budgets and the actions of actually meeting those and keeping to emissions targets, and crucially, what the action is for adaptation. So I'm going to move us on to the other really important thing in the Climate Change Act, and that was one specific clause around nature-based solutions. So this is a crucial piece of policy that basically says that the actions being developed to deliver the Climate Change Act, so to get to net zero by 2050, must, as far as possible, include nature-based projects. And that's both in terms of reducing emissions, but also in providing resilience and climate change adaptation. Earlier this year, in April, there were a number of recommendations published by the UK's Climate Change Committee specific to the progress in Northern Ireland to adapting to climate change. And I pulled out a few of these here, but again, I would very much encourage you to read the full report, delve into that, have a little look at it. It's available on the Climate Change Committee website, and the link is there on the slide. But it's actually very important in terms of linking both the biodiversity elements of what we're trying to do in this call and the climate change elements. So one of the key recommendations is around improving the ecological health of Northern Ireland's habitats, including supporting their biodiversity. And that's very much seen that only when we can achieve good ecological health do we have the resilience needed to adapt to climate change. It also includes things like incorporating those climate change scenarios in almost everything we do. So if you're looking at a species action plan, we must be looking at that with climate change in mind. So looking at those forward scenarios and what that might do. We must incorporate interim adaptation targets to help us with driving action towards climate resilience. There's a crucial action for us in Northern Ireland around coastal vulnerability. We still as yet don't have legislation on coastal erosion, which is a significant gap. And there are plans to put that in place, but looking at the time frame, that may be 2027. In the meantime, the Climate Change Committee have urged us to continue to look at coastal vulnerability and work on local plans to support communities to adapt to coastal vulnerability and coastal change. Invest in facilitating the restoration of marine habitats, which again first involves identifying the restorable habitats and then undertaking such actions to facilitate restoration, and stronger protection of marine protected areas. So in Northern Ireland, we have exceeded the 30% target for marine protected area coverage. However, many of those do not yet have a management plan and management actions put in place. So again, it's crucial under the global biodiversity framework targets, as well as under the recommendations for the climate resilience, to look at getting management put in place. And those are coastal and offshore areas. And finally, this one is possibly more of a social science element, is looking at co-benefits and minimizing trade-offs between multiple uses of land and sea. As we know, we have targets around offshore renewable energy. In Northern Ireland, we have the target of 1 gigawatt of offshore wind by 2030. We also need to ensure climate resilience, nature recovery, food production, and recreation. So it's very important that we have all those elements balanced. All of this requires co-designed and local action involving local communities at the heart. This is very important for us to demonstrate how we can move forward. So exemplar projects in terms of restoring coastal habitats and marine habitats, and how to use nature-based solutions in a coastal context are really important to Northern Ireland. And then finally, and not least at all, we must ensure that coastal resilience, it also includes threats to our historic environment and our historic heritage. So we need to incorporate all those elements in looking at how we manage our coastline going forward. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Annika. So I'll just invite Tim now up from the DHLG, I think it is. I'll get that right sometime. So Tim, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, Declan. Thanks, Annika. So my name is Tim O'Higgins. I am from the DHLGH. We prefer to say I'm from the Marine Environment section of the Department of Housing in Ireland. I live in, our Marine Environment section is based in Cork. I left West Cork at 8:30 yesterday morning, and a storm followed me all the way up to Dublin, where I had a meeting. It caught up with me in Dublin, and then it followed me up to Belfast. And I was very much reminded that natural phenomena, such as the things we're going to be looking at through this call, don't respect boundaries. You know, so that's a very important thing to remember in this call, is that, you know, it's all about the connections between north and south. And then I found myself here this morning in such a kind of a historic place, and I want to thank the people in SEUPB for organising such a lovely venue. But just looking around this location, very much reminded of the connections between coastal communities and coastal societies and the sea, and that's another common thread throughout this call is the connections between people and the environment, and the importance of the environment, the marine environment, in supporting people and providing ecosystem services and supporting biodiversity. So as I say, I'm from the Marine Environment section. What I'm going to do is just briefly run through some of the work we do in the Marine Environment section. It's very much aligned with our colleagues in DERA. And I'm going to talk about some of the priorities we have, some of the data gaps and the knowledge gaps that we have. So the Marine Environment section, I suppose it operates on three levels. We operate at a national scale, and the Government of Ireland has a commitment to achieving 30% marine protected areas by 2030. That's one of our big drivers, and that's my main focus of my work at the moment. And we want to develop comprehensive national legislation to do that. We also do work with, you know, coastal communities, green schools, national clean coasts and green schools. So we're actually playing catch up. You mentioned that you had 30% coverage. We had 2% coverage till the end of last year, and we're at 8 now. So we've a long way to go, and we're hoping that we might learn some lessons from our colleagues up here. And we also operate in the context of competing drivers for the marine environment. So we have marine spatial planning. We've a huge drive to exploit our marine renewable energy resources. We're very much aware of climate change and ocean acidification. And then, of course, we operate in the we operate in the sphere where, you know, we have these competing drivers, including fisheries, and we're very much aware that you know, we need to have sustainable ecological systems if we want to sustain our flows of ecosystem services and our dependence on the marine environment. So we work at a national scale. We have nationally competing drivers. We work at the European scale. So one of the big drivers for a lot of national marine environmental policy is Europe, and we have the Habitats Directive. But our main focus in the marine environment section is the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. We're also very much aware of the EU biodiversity strategy, this new nature restoration law that's coming down the tracks at us with very ambitious targets for the restoration of habitats, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So we're interested in ensuring as well that we have we're interested in seeing how the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, the Nature Restoration Law, all line up and synergize with the new action plan for restoring and protecting ecosystems for sustainable and resilient fisheries. So we have these, again, it's at the European scale, it's these multiple competing objectives and how to manage them together. We also work at the regional level in OSPAR. We were quite heavily involved in designing the NACES Marine Protected Area, and we've been working very hard on our latest quality status report. And then we have the international level work. So Sustainable Development Goal 14, we have the Convention on Biodiversity, the new Kunming-Montreal's commitment to achieving 30%. We're involved in negotiating the International Plastics Treaty, the negotiations on biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, and the International Seabed Authority. So we have a very broad remit, and we work across scales. My own personal work and my own personal interest and a focus which is going to drive quite a lot, I think, of the actions on the ground in terms of marine environmental protection and conservation over the coming years is the preparation of the Marine Protected Area Bill. So we're hoping to put in place, hoping to publish a bill for marine protected areas by the end of the year. We hope to enact it as soon as possible. The goal of this is to put in place 30% marine protected areas by 2030. And we've also applied for Life Grant. We've got 25 million in funding over the next 9 years to support this marine protected area initiative. And the focus of this marine protected area work, and in fact, the focus of a lot of our Marine Strategy Framework Directive work is on participation. It's on people. We've seen the difficulties that the Irish national government had in the past when nature conservation is about setting nature against people and dividing, separating humans from nature. We see it's very important. We think it's a more practical approach. We think it's more theoretically feasible to practice ecosystem-based management, where we recognize that humans and natures are all part of a social ecological system, and that the human systems have to operate within the bounds of the environmental systems which support them. So participation is a major focus for us. We'd like to see the social side of things. I think the social side of things is very important. The connections between the marine environment and the societies that it support, and there are a lot of data gaps between how these things link up, and we see that as a key aspect of future projects and future work. So now we'll get on to some of the kind of more technical. I'll just briefly discuss some of the more technical aspects of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive work. So as you probably all know, there are 11 descriptors of good environmental status under the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. So we have biodiversity, we have non-Indigenous species, we have commercial fish, we have food webs, we have eutrophication, we have seafloor integrity, you've got contaminants of seafood, you have marine litter, and then you have energy and noise. So you know, and we broadly think the picture here, the circle, shows our last assessment of good environmental status for Ireland's EZ, and you can see that for many of them we think we're in good status. Non-Indigenous species, eutrophication, seafloor integrity, contaminants, and marine litter, we think we're not in too bad shape. For other things, we haven't been able to assess them, or we're not sure the data aren't there, or maybe we're not in good status. So there are many elements of biodiversity where the data aren't really sufficient to support a determination, or where we're not sure. There are key questions about food webs and what does a healthy food web look like, and what elements go into a healthy food web, and how can we assess that? There are elements of fisheries that aren't completely assessed in terms of bycatch. There are elements of seafloor integrity that we haven't been able to assess. So, you know, we know what we know, and we know what we don't know. And in answering this call, it'd be very important to us for applicants to take a look at where the knowledge gaps are, and take a look at the critical knowledge gaps, and if projects can help us to address them in practical ways. I'll flick on to the next slide. So sorry, I must say that what I've highlighted in red, these are the priorities of the call. In red, I've kind of highlighted some of the priorities of our section. Food web methodologies are important. Phytoplankton and zooplankton would be great, especially considering the impact of climate change if we had long-term data sets on phytoplankton and zooplankton. Joint pelagic habitat action plans. You can see it all there. And just to skip on to the next few priorities, I've highlighted nature-based solutions, carbon storage. The new Marine Protected Area Law will specifically protect things on the basis of ecosystem services. So not just species and habitats, but ecosystem services as well. So the more we can learn about ecosystem processes like carbon storage, carbon sequestration, ecosystem services, nature-based solutions, even ecosystem services accounting. So that's just a broad overview. Like I say, we operate on many scales. We're very conscious that environmental protection needs to be conducted under a system that works. We see that system being ecosystem-based management, where activities are conducted sustainably within the system bounds of the ecosystems which support them. So thanks very much again, and just to thank our colleagues for providing such a wonderful venue.
Thank you very much, Tim and Anika, for those very informative and important presentations. I know many of you will be taking notes, just to be mindful, everything's being recorded today. And the presentations will be online, so you can go back and have a look at these after today, because there's a lot of good information and important information in there. So I'm going to welcome Emer Bush then, who's going to be really the key contact point for you when you're setting out to develop your applications in the weeks ahead. So Emer's going to take you through the detail of the investment area and a little bit more information on that, and also importantly the concept note process as well. So Emer, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Declan, and thank you, Anika and Tim. Welcome, everybody. This is a tremendous turnout, and as Tim says, it feels like a very appropriate venue.
Many of these we've run in Dungannon, which is also a very appropriate venue because it's right at the centre of the core area. But given the focus of this investment area, it feels really important to look out onto water, to see yachts, to see boats. The other thing I could see when I was sitting there listening to everybody were some inspirational quotes. And there was one there at the corner. As I listened to some of that presentation and some of the data and information, which does make your heart sink a little and realise that there's a huge mountain to climb in this area. But over there in the corner, it says, nature never did betray the heart that loved her. And as I present an awful lot of cerebral, head-based information today and present you with tasks and application forms. Essentially, I think most of us are here because of the heart and because of the fact that we're an island nation and love our coast, our marine environment, and nature and natural environment. So I'm very grateful that you're here, prepared to work to make this core area better and to improve nature and the environment. So my role, as Declan said, from today is that any organizations in partnership interested in becoming a lead partner or a partner under investment area 5.2 may complete and submit a concept note. It's now available on the website for my comment, advice and support. The concept note is available on the website presently. You can download it and it covers some but not all of the questions in the application proper. It does not, for example, cover the horizontal principles, and I don't want in any instance for you to think that that means we're sidelining them and they do not matter. They are paramount, and I will come back to that. But please be sure that in every investment area, not least this one, that the horizontal principles of sustainable development, non-discrimination and equality between men and women and equal opportunities are hugely important, and they'll be mainstream throughout your application. The concept note will help you put in place the foundations of your project so you're better prepared when the call opens. I'm aware that there are partnerships that are underway already and that are building projects already. So I think some of you are not coming at this from a standing start. Others are here to explore options today and that they've read about this and have come along to see if they can find partners or how they can participate. And I'll talk a little bit about my role in that later and how I might help match you up, create networking opportunities, make introductions, but equally stay around afterwards today and meet each other, talk and find out what each other is doing. The concept note is not a formal application process. It's very informal. I know some of you in the room already, and I've talked to you through other concept note processes, and I hope you'll agree that it is informal but valuable. I'm responsive and I will guide and help you as very best I can until the call opens. The concept note is not scored. There's nothing competitive about this at this stage. It's designed to get your application into a much better state when it comes to navigating the online GEMS system. At this stage as well, I would say you're in a more privileged position than those who got pre-application support earlier on, because the website is now populated with a huge number of documents, guides, guidance notes, and changes that we are making for the better all the time on the basis of feedback we're receiving from applicants who are navigating the process presently. So, as though it needs to be asked, why marine and coastal management? And the accountable departments have already given you a very strong answer as to why. Both governments are committed to addressing climate change, and PEACEPLUS has a very significant role in the development of a greener and more resilient Europe. We launched the programme 2 weeks ago, and we had the Vice President of the EU Commission, Maros Sefcovic, here in Northern Ireland, helping us to launch it. And one of his responsibilities is the Green Deal, and his endorsement of our programme and coming here to Northern Ireland was very much a strong nod saying that we're doing the right thing for the region. This strategic cross-border investment shall protect and enhance our natural environment, along with other investment areas under Area 5. This is extremely significant and important and can hopefully contribute to those many strategies that have been mentioned and those strategies that are in the process of being developed by the departments. And it's great news that DAERA have said that those that are in process that are not yet published, they'll share those key elements with me that I can then share in turn with yourselves. Marine and coastal environment is under pressure from both human activities and climate change, and it's impacting habitats and species. It's in the news every day these days, as we know. There's stress on Ireland and Northern Ireland's biodiversity, on the natural resources, and on our beloved coastal infrastructure. And climate change is accelerating coastal erosion. I've had the opportunity before we started today to chat to a few of you informally. And some of you are coming from large organisations with hundreds of people, and some are coming from very small, locally based organisations, but all I'm hearing the same thing, coastal erosion, what you can do locally, how you can join up and do things in a more regional basis. And everyone, I think, is here with one goal in mind. The marine environment, very obviously, but I should say it, is transboundary in nature. Water flows, water moves, water is well suited to cross-border collaboration. And this must be a truly trans-border. Any project that you put forward must be truly cross-border in nature. There has been mention already this morning, that's moved, the concern about marine birds, the impact of the said changes on wintering water birds, spring, summer breeding birds. I heard something on the radio recently about birds blowing over from North America and being spotted in the Pembrokeshire coast. Fascinating, and that they won't be able to make their way back because they don't have the strength. So climate change is blowing them off course. Also concern about impacts on human activities that is impacting ocean acidification, rising temperatures. I'm a bit of a sea swimmer, and there's no doubt about it that this summer has been significantly warmer in the sea than ever before. And that what that rising temperature, albeit it might be easier for me to get into the water, it's having a very negative effect on the food webs and pelagic ecosystems. So climate change is threatening marine coastal heritage, and there is the need for development of mitigation and adaptation plans for heritage assets. And when I get on to what we want the results and outcomes of the programme to be, it will address these issues. Marine litter, we've mentioned that already, poses a significant threat to the biodiversity of the marine environment. And investment area 5.2, and you'll hear this more than once today, we really want to reach the grassroots. Tim was very eloquent on how he put it around public awareness and working in partnership with people. We're not divorced from nature. It's intrinsic to all of our lives. Therefore, social action, co-design, citizen science, public awareness, that has to be in all of these projects, and how you work with the public and all of us who are users of the coastline and the sea. We envisage funding in the region of 3 to 4 projects for this investment area. There's a large amount of money available, 24.8 million, and the grant size likely, but we will be responsive to what you put into us, but likely we think to be in the region of 5 to 11 million. And there might be small groups represented here today and say, well, how can we possibly be involved in this? And I would say, in terms of partnership, this is your opportunity to network and talk to the larger organisations who are likely to be leading those bids, who will need you when it comes to the outreach, the public awareness, and the engaging with local people. Let's go at a high level, first of all, to talk about the objective and result of Investment Area 5.2 Marine and Coastal Management. The objective, and this is important because when it comes to the concept note, there will be a question asking how you fit the objective and result. So bear in mind the objective is to enable a cross-border approach to the protection of the marine and coastal environment from potentially damaging human activities, and to support the development of climate change adaptation plans to increase the resilience of ecosystems, coastal communities, infrastructure and the marine economy. It will promote climate change adaptation and sustainable marine and coastal management. And the ambitious result we would like to see is improved knowledge and management of the transboundary marine environment and a programme area which is more resilient and responsive to climate change and threats from human activities. What does it seek to achieve? Again, you'll have heard some of this earlier, and these slides will be available after today on the website. We seek to protect and restore habitats that provide coastal protection, carbon storage, such as sand dunes, salt marshes, seagrass, kelp, shellfish beds. We are seeking new measurement tools to ensure marine renewable energy provides opportunities that move us towards the net zero emission targets, whilst considering potential impacts to marine environment. Area-based studies. So those more locally based studies, clusters of areas required to develop bespoke place-based solutions, the types of gaps that the departments were talking about earlier on. And collaboration, and PEACEPLUS is a programme that, as was Interreg 5, that many of you will have participated in, and core to it is collaborative approaches. So collaborations that result in improved performance in achieving related targets set at national and European levels. And this programme, throughout this programme, it's all about working together on cross-border basis. Economic, social and environmental benefits with a view to having sustainable, lasting and legacy across the programme area. Obviously, the foremost legacy is around the environment, but besides that, besides the environmental legacy, we do want to see social and economic legacies. This is the PEACEPLUS programme, and it talks about peace, reconciliation and prosperity. And whilst you are an environmental programme, we do want, as Declan said, for you to have a think and address how your project will address peace and prosperity. Going back to my very first comment about how the environment rests in the heart of all of us, it brings people together regardless of age, creed, ability. It's something that is intrinsic to us all, and that is one way of demonstrating how your project will address the PEACEPLUS requirements, in particular the peace requirements of the call. There are 4 categories of initiative, I suppose we might call them, under this call. Initiative 1 is coastal change. And coastal change is around the improved evidence-based knowledge and understanding of the rate of coastal change and coastal vulnerability. And again, just over scones and coffee before we started, somebody already pulled out a map and showed me down the Ards Peninsula how erosion and coastal change is happening. And they've got some ideas as to how they can put in place mitigations for that. And obviously all around the coast, that's what we're interested in, better understanding the hydrographical conditions in the nearshore zone, impacts of significant infrastructure developments, seafloor habitat types and seafloor integrity. And the evidence that you produce should inform policy and practices and result in more resilient coastal areas. And for each of those slides, I have got a couple of bullet points there around the anticipated actions. I'll read a couple of them and let you read those afterwards, but improved evidence bases relating to coastal change, activities leading to the development of adaptation and resilience plans, development and implementation of teaching and awareness raising resources. Initiative 2 is climate and pelagic systems. And again, improved evidence-based knowledge and understanding of coastal, oceanographic and sediment transport dynamics in the changing climate context, including effects of key climate drivers on pelagic habitats and food webs. And I know some of you are proposing very ambitious projects, taking ships to sea and going deeper and further to do research further out, and to seek improved understanding of the risks to and impacts upon the pelagic ecosystem, human activities reliant upon it, including fisheries and conservation. And again, we've got 5 bullet points there around the anticipated actions, improved evidence bases relating to oceanographic and hydrodynamic modelling. I won't read them all out, we'll go to the last. Development of transboundary action plans on climate and pelagic systems. Please take the time to read these slides in more detail. Initiative 3, natural capital, habitats and human behaviour. And this initiative seeks improved understanding on coastal and marine habitats and their role as nature-based solutions to climate change adaptation and mitigation. So improved evidence-based knowledge to support decision-making in marine spatial planning, fisheries management, marine protected area identification and management, and to support the recovery and/or restoration of impacted habitat types. Marine litter crops up here, the circular economy, the understanding of human activities and marine habitats, and generation of innovative methodologies for assessing habitat condition. Improved actions around improved evidence bases on issues such as marine bird activities, mapping of existing and services and action plans across themes such as marine ecosystem services and geohazards, and developments of strategies or protocols relating to the circular economy with a review to a reduction in marine litter. Initiative 4 is expected across all projects. This is local actions, and local actions are mandatory for all. And this is about an improved sense of local and transboundary responsibility regarding marine biodiversity and heritage, including understanding population trends of protected species and human impacts. Improved understanding of underwater cultural heritage resources to support marine planning, heritage asset management, and improved public awareness and appreciation with the aim of better outcomes for communities and the marine environment. Public engagement and community actions, local stewardship, community and citizen participation, education, awareness raising, all of this is paramount. And we do expect you to develop local networks and local actions for all projects. Project legacy is important for everything in PEACEPLUS, but not least in our environmental projects, where we are trying to reverse trends, put in place mitigations, come up with solutions. The models, interventions and data generated through this programme should be designed in a manner which ensures the knowledge is usable and transferable beyond the lifetime of the project. Strong data management, integrated from the start, should be clearly demonstrated in project design. So evaluation is hugely important in your project, and you should build capacity for your evaluation into your project. They should be longitudinal evaluations, last several years, and you will probably require access to support and engagement from all your stakeholders and participants. So it's a key aspect of your project will be your evaluation. Back to data management, which links to that. So data management in from the start, clearly demonstrated in your project design. And it should also include plans for data transfer to competent authorities throughout the process and at the end of the projects. And I've also, and this will be part of my role as I help you develop your concept notes and guide you as to the suitability of your project. But funded projects should liaise between themselves, share learning. The projects that we fund here, be it 3 or 4, shall be complementary in nature. Whilst they will be doing different activities and actions, they will complement each other, and we will want you to share, to discuss together, and to learn together. Okay, I'm moving into the concept note at last. As I said earlier, it's downloadable from the website. It's quite short. As far as I remember, there is a suggestion in each section as to the word count. I'm happy enough if you exceed that. This is an informal process. It's not a GEMS online form where if you exceed the character count, it will not let you go any further. So if you feel you need to exceed the word count without sending me War and Peace, please do. I'm available to take emails or phone calls pre and post concept note completion. It avoids putting you through a hugely onerous process if this investment area 5.2 is not for you. So it's a 4 or 5 page form, and probably by the time you complete it, it's a 10 or 12 page form, as opposed to a 100-page form if you go the full distance of the marathon that is completing a full application. I ask for you to complete and return this no later than the 27th of October, so that's 4 weeks' time. If you get it in earlier than that, that's fine, and I will engage with you earlier than that. And that's my email address for returning the concept note. So I want to take you through the questions and what's expected of the questions. The program manual is available on the website. I spoke to somebody earlier about the program manual who had downloaded it and considered it. When you are going back over the slides here, I would draw your attention to pages 62 to 64 of the program manual, which gives you, breaks down some of these application questions, which correspond to the concept note questions, and give you a few bullet points as to the areas that we're looking for. So it's not too early to be looking at the program manual. Question 1 is around how the project has been identified and how does it align with the stated objectives of 5.2. And don't forget how it will enhance peace. So we're now under a PEACEPLUS programme. Yes, it's an environmental project, but peace is relevant to all our investment areas. Tell us how your project builds on existing practices and contributes to wider strategies. And you've been very well guided this morning as to the strategies that you must address, fit with, expand upon and meet. How does it contribute to the investment area objective in terms of a cross-border approach to the protection of the marine and coastal environment? How does it contribute to the investment area result? And that was in an earlier slide, I won't read it out again. And how does it make a direct contribution to peace and prosperity for the region? Question 1 also asks you specifically to tell me how your project meets the outputs and results for this investment area. And this is the first slide that I've put up that describes the outputs and results. Now, these are at a high level, as described in this slide. The output indicators are that collectively, the projects that we fund, be it 3 or 4, should collectively have 17 strategies and action plans that have been jointly developed and 10 pilot actions developed and jointly implemented in projects. Output is during the course of the project. Result comes at the end of the project. And the result is that 13 of those joint strategies and action plans have been taken up by organisations, 13 of the 17, and the 8 of the 10 pilot actions and solutions have been taken up or upscaled by organisations. They're extremely high-level indicators. Underneath those indicators, you should produce outputs, including the development of or contribution to joint strategies and action plans that address the above. So we want you to be able to drill down and give us indicators below those and much more detail as to what you're doing below those. The quality of project design is about the actions you will take to achieve your outputs and results. You shall address one or more, well, you will address, yes, one or more, and 4, as I've already said, is mandatory. 1 or more of the 4 areas that I've talked you through already. Coastal change, climate and pelagic systems, natural capital, habitats and human behaviour, and local action. So go through those and describe how your project fits in terms of those. I also want to know how many people you will reach through actions. It's been said many times this morning, participation, local engagement is paramount. Projects should closely review the priority habitats and species and associated anticipated actions annex. It's on the website. Tim also had it up in his slide. It was the slide with the 11 descriptors, and down the side it had the priority habitats, species activities, the focus of the work proposed and the actions. Those are key slides. So if you go back to those slides of Tim or go onto our website where that anticipated actions list is, that's an incredibly important 2-pager for you to match your project against and describe your, under question 2 is where I want to see in terms of quality of project design, the nitty-gritty of what you're doing and what you're addressing. Question 3 is around the cross-border, cross-community question. What geographical areas will your project cover? What is the proposed action for this cross-border area? In Interreg 5, Scotland was part of the core area, is what we now call it. It's now part of the functional area. I'm not sure who's here from Scotland today. I haven't met any but one specifically. But as we already said about the transboundary nature of water, this is most likely going to be an investment area where Scottish partners will have a strong interest and may bring, or even beyond Scotland, may bring core learning benefits for the core area and for Northern Ireland and the border region. So in terms of the geographic coverage, it may be slightly broader than just the core area. How is your project cross-border? So describe how it has been developed and implemented. Does it use staff from both sides of the border working together for a common goal? Is there community focus on environmental learning from both sides of the border? Is it inclusive of multiple communities? Are you using a shared approach on a cross-border basis? Is your collaboration clear and measurable in terms of the outcomes? We talk about the 4 J's. You must meet 3 of the 4 J's. By J, I mean joint. So that's joint development, joint implementation, joint financing, and joint staffing. And I would hope that all projects meet all of those 4 J's. The cross-border basis, we will look at the people and communities you engage with and the legacy that you leave. Under this question, I also want the issue of duplication and displacement to be addressed, and for you to tell me if you've considered it, what added value the EU project funding brings. Does your project build on a previous project? Does it show an evolution of ideas? Is it likely to impact upon or complement similar or existing planned provision? And this is where At this stage, you may have limited knowledge in being able to answer this question, but I hopefully will be able to help in networking the projects together and sharing information. Yes, it's a competitive call, but we have to be sensible in that we're competing with a small c, because this is for the greater good of the environmental protection and for what the call's seeking to achieve. My heart sinks a little bit when people don't want to share information because they feel that it's a competitive call and they're going to miss out on funding. I understand that. I understand the competitive nature and the need to chase funding and to keep organisations, to keep streams of funding going. But I think what's more important here is that we achieve the right outcomes for the investment area and we get the right benefits for this geographical location in the core area. Question 4 in the concept note is about your partnership and your implementation arrangements. Some of you will be brand new to PEACEPLUS. Well, all of you are brand new to PEACEPLUS. Some of you will be new to these cooperation programs, EU cooperation programs, and a lot of you will have participated in Interreg before and understand that it's complicated and it does ask and require a lot of organisations. We want to know about the team, excuse me, the team that will manage the project, your suitability, your track record, your experience, both as lead partner, whoever that's going to be, and the partners. And do you have the necessary organisational capacity to manage a multi-annual, large-scale EU project? So these are 4-year projects, most likely somewhere in the 4 to 11 million euro mark. So that takes significant organisation, management and control. How will you be accountable for that smooth project delivery? How will you adequately resource the project and resource responsibilities for what we call work packages, work plans, themes? How have you divided up the delivery of this? And what practical arrangements do you have in place to identify and mitigate risk? And I know there's some of you in the room the last time who managed significant projects and COVID hit, and there were all sorts of problems around projects that require that you can't do virtually, you can't do in Zoom. You have to be out in the ocean, in boats, on the coast monitoring. And what do we do if issues like that strike again? Question 5 is around value for money. At this stage, the concept note really seeks a high-level budget. We will want to know about your staffing arrangements. We want to know what you're tendering for, if there's external expertise, what sort of tendering process is required, how each budget line has been arrived at. In the concept note, it really is a very high-level budget, and I'm more than happy for you to send me a more detailed accompanying Excel spreadsheet breakdown so that we can work on that. Or you might want to do that slightly later when we work to review the concept note. I want to see what sort of assumptions that you've based your budget on. And when it comes to the full assessment, obviously this will be assessed to make sure that it demonstrates economical use of public resources in terms of its budget efficiency. Projects, as I said, should be costed over 4 years, and that should include a lead-in and a wind-down period. So I shouldn't be seeing a flat budget, because you will have some recruitment and startup costs, and then the rollout of and delivery of the project. And then at the end of maybe it will be 3.5 years, 3.75 years, there'll be a flattening, a winding down as you wind the project up and report back to us. Okay. and I've written here, mention the cross-cutting themes, which I did at the start of the presentation. So although in the concept note, I'm asking for 5 areas, I really want to stress that the horizontal principles, and there is now on the website a really detailed guide as to how you will address the horizontal principles of sustainable development, which should be the bread and butter for organizations applying to this investment area, but do not make assumptions that because you are an environmental project that you don't need to go into how you will address the sustainable development principles. And also the equality, equal opportunities, you know, make those are now, those now have double the weighting that they did in the previous programs. So they're immensely important. When I talked about the partnership arrangements, I touched a little bit on the lead partner, but I want to have a slide solely on the lead partner to stress the importance of the responsibility that the lead partner has, because essentially they are responsible for ensuring the implementation of the entire project. They've have a wide-ranging role that's detailed and technical that covers it. You may devolve responsibilities, but ultimately the contract will be between SEUPB and the lead partner. So the lead partner will be responsible for project coordination, for financial management. In brackets, I've written there control function. Those of you that were involved in previous programs will know that control was carried out by SEUPB, where we reviewed all claims and conducted a full review of the eligibility of those claims. It will now be part of the project's responsibility to appoint the control function, and that will come out of your budget, the cost of that. And in terms of my pre-development support, I can speak to you more about that when you submit your concept note. Lead partner is responsible for reporting, for communication, for any training that there might be, both that we deliver for the project and any internal project training that you deliver with your partners, to make sure that you've got the specific and relevant policies and procedures in place, and for the project evaluation that I've already talked about, and that is so important across PEACEPLUS, but particularly important in these investment areas where we are seeking you to develop strategies and new ways of working and project legacy. Some concluding remarks. Nobody, well, I hope, certainly nobody from the panel here today is rushing off. So we're available to talk today, to network, and I would encourage you to network, to convene meetings, to build your concept note before you send it in to me, find out about each other's ideas. And I realise that you can only do that so much at this stage, but I hopefully will help in doing that when the concept notes come in to me, to ensure complementarity. Do think about the finances carefully. We've got a tight window in which to deliver these projects, and what can you deliver in a 4-year period? Local engagement is key. It's been said so many times today. Have clarity of purpose of your project. Your project must meet all the requirements of 5.2 that we've described. But in doing that, do not forget your focus on peace and prosperity. Know how you're going to monitor your targets and evaluate impact. And we shall manage this investment area collectively. So think about how you will link with other funded projects. In terms of networking, I've made a little promise. There are a couple of gentlemen here today from Donaghadee Yacht Club, and they're interested in meeting the RYA if they're here, and the Commission for Irish Lights if they're here. So there's Noel, you just wave. So I don't normally do that, but it's a way of beginning to make some introductions. So please do not be afraid to approach each other, make introductions, and begin to make connections, particularly as there are some small local groups and some much larger groups who are well versed in the process of applying for EU funding. And please know that you are of mutual benefit to each other, and that we're very grateful for all groups to be represented here today, and that we need the engagement of big and small to make this investment area work to have the best impact that it can for the eligible and core region. So I look forward to getting to know you and working with you in the coming weeks.
Thanks very much, Emer. Hopefully you found that very informative in terms of the process, and Emer taking the time to go through each of those elements of the concept note, and I suppose what's ahead over the coming weeks. Probably just to reiterate some points, I suppose one point to note is there is probably going to be quite a quick turnaround between the pre-application support process that will start from today and the call opening. So at the minute, we're sort of planning for the call to open in December for a period in and around sort of 3 months, maybe a little bit longer with Christmas and that in there in the holiday season. But normally there'd be a longer sort of time period there. I think that's probably beneficial in some sense because it's going to be a much more intensive period of the support on one hand, and then moving on then to the call quite quickly after that in terms of the full application process. I really would strongly encourage you all, if you're really thinking about a plan in a serious way, to engage with Emer and engage with her, early in the process. You might just have a bit of an idea, a bit of a thread of an idea. You're not sure whether it fits. Emer can give you some of that advice up front. It may not be necessary to complete the full concept note, or Emer can tell you maybe it's more appropriate to go elsewhere. So not every project is going to fit perfectly with a PEACEPLUS programme and the investment area itself. So, this is also about that as well. And I think it's important that, that people aren't wasting time maybe pursuing a full application when it's not an exact fit with the investment area. But hopefully most of you, will be relevant and will be linked, and you can then follow through that process with Emer. It is really important as well, again, to reiterate the point, it's been made multiple times today about that sort of co-design, about that engagement piece with communities. It's important right across all of the investment areas on theme 5 in particular. It's a thread that runs right across every project, or should run across every project. So you've heard us all talking about that this morning, and it's just to reiterate that point. And also then just going back, I suppose, to the earlier presentations from the two departments, and that alignment piece with policies and strategies at a governmental level, at a EU level, again, all of that will be subject to assessment. So it's important, again, that you're looking at things in that context as well.